Just wanted to wake everyone up after our break, after the delicious snacks. This is actually my second time in Medellín. I'm a huge fan of the city, and like many people, I had my own ideas. My friend came down here, and I said, spend 2 weeks there, and then I'll come visit. And I've fallen in love with this entire country and the city. So I would like to thank everybody for putting on TEDx here. I'm so happy to see it, and fascinated by everything that people are presenting. So the 4-Hour Body was a 3-year quest to work with hundreds of scientists, ranging from NASA scientists in thermodynamics to cold exposure, really looking at one question. And that question is, what are the smallest changes that produce the biggest effects in the human body? And so I want to make self-tracking sexy in some respect, and the findings were very, very surprising. And I will jump to that by showing you another video, but one example of a surprising finding would be just how little it takes to catalyze fat loss. My father was very, very overweight. He was 250 pounds at 5'6", very obese. And in less than an hour per week of any type of exercise and some slight changes to his diet, he lost more than 90 pounds of fat and gained between 20 and 30 pounds of muscle at age 65. So in that case, it was very literally the 4-hour body in a month time span.
This is a biopsy needle? Just for comparative purposes. Yeah. It's about just a little bit thinner than a pencil.
If you get queasy easily, you may want to look away. This is the right side of my leg, the vastus lateralis. And this is at the Sports Science Institute of South Africa. If you try to do this in the United States, you have to sign about 500 pages, waivers, and wait 6 months. So it was a lot faster to do at this Sports Science Institute. That's the depth of the biopsy needle, which is going to be inserted right here inside of my leg. I'm recording this with my own flip camera. And the purpose of this particular experiment, one of several hundred, was to collect muscle tissue samples. So they put in a tube, it's hollow, they apply suction, it pulls the muscle tissue into the chamber, then they rotate it to cut off that muscle sample. Fortunately, there are no pain receptors in that once you get past the skin. You'll see it looks about as good as it feels. And you'll hear druk an, which is not Dutch, it sounds a lot like it, that is Afrikaans. I'm not on any drugs, despite how I may look. So the samples are frozen in liquid nitrogen. Why would I subject myself to this? What is the point of all that, other than shocking and awing and disgusting all of you here? The point was to look very closely at a few things, one of which was my genetic map. So are your genetics your destiny? Are they a starting point? Or are they like a power box in your house where you have switches and you can turn things on and off by making different changes in your environment, your diet, your exercise, etc.? Turns out it's very much like the latter. And in this particular case, I had taken tests with 23andMe, Navigenics, and both had come back and said, you know what, really sorry to inform you, but you have what's called a nonsense allele of the actin-3 gene, which means you can't really produce fast-twitch muscle fiber. So you're not going to be a world-class sprinter, you're not going to be a world-class high jumper. Sorry, you're predisposed to endurance. Okay, well, let's look at my endurance. That muscle sample was analyzed for enzymes that, in many cases, govern endurance. So you can see citrate synthase and so forth and so on. The baseline, that the x-axis at 0, is Homer Simpson. That's the untrained human being. The red is an African antelope. I'm not going to compete with the African antelope, kicking ass pretty much across the board. The blue is trained endurance athlete, and then green is Tim Ferris. Tim Ferris is below 0, worse than Homer Simpson. So much for my predisposition to endurance. So you can see that the genetic prediction failed on one count. This is the second failure of the genetic prediction. So you can see here, these are actually 3 types of muscle fibers. Type 1, the blue, is slow twitch. Then type 2A, which is the red, is fast twitch muscle fiber. And you look at Tim Ferris on the right-hand side, all the way to the right, I actually have the highest percentage of type 2A fast twitch muscle fiber. Why is that? It's because I trained specifically to develop fast-twitch muscle fiber. So you train for your destination, not for your current condition. And I've seen many different examples of this over the last 3 years, some of which defy belief. And I'll show you one right now. This looks like a very normal girl, and she is, by all outward indications. This photograph was sent to me by Barry Ross, who trains world-class sprinters. This is a 132-pound high school girl. She can also deadlift, that's this type of motion, off the floor to standing 405 pounds for repetitions. Easily, and then go train afterwards for running. So I felt very emasculated by this, of course, and decided I needed to get much more serious about my training. And in less than 12 weeks, went from a maximum, in my case, of about 315 pounds to more than 650 pounds. That's in 12 weeks. And all I did was less than 5 minutes of muscular tension per week, 3 sets of 2 to 3 repetitions with 6 minutes of rest in between. That's it. So this is a scientific process. What makes someone a scientist is not a label, it's not a PhD necessarily, a lot of good PhDs, but it's someone who follows a process. Darwin, Mendel, all amateurs. Benjamin Franklin, who called his science philosophical endeavors. You need to have a replicable process. You need to test hypotheses well. This is another example. The tanning and the anti-gravity shorts are optional. I gained 34 pounds of lean body mass in 28 days, and I was supervised by a PhD at San Jose State University. I also took my cholesterol from 220 to 147 in that same period of time. Total time in the gym for that month was 4 hours, 2 30-minute workouts per week. In case you think that's fine and good, but you're a single male, testosterone, et cetera, all of these things. This is Tracy, mother of 2. She lost almost 120 pounds with 2 to 3 training sessions per week of roughly 20 minutes, and I'll explain how she did that. Patrick did this with no exercise whatsoever, changes in diet following something that I call the slow-carb diet, 120 plus pounds lost. All right, the guiding tenet. Whenever you find yourself on the side of the majority, it's time to pause and reflect. Very seldom are the most popular approaches the best approaches in terms of efficacy or efficiency. I'm going to cover 4 guiding principles, or first principles from the 4-hour body, which can be applied to anything ranging from your own body, your physique, to startups, to companies. I'm an advisor and investor in companies like Facebook, Twitter, so forth and so on. How do you take that type of multivariate testing and apply it to the human body? It starts with a few basic rules. Always seek the minimum effective dose. The minimum effective dose, much like a drug, is looking at exercise and diet and asking yourself, what is the appropriate dose, like 500 milligrams of an antibiotic, that'll get me my result? Any more than that will produce side effects. Here you see Tracy doing kettlebell swings, which look like this. It's with a weight that you hold in your hand. You can use any number of things. And it turns out the minimum effective dose for rapid body recomposition is less than 5 minutes 3 times a week. 1 set of kettlebell swings, 50 to 75 repetitions with maximum weight, 3 times a week. That's it. Less than 15 minutes, and you can lose 120 pounds. Then you see on the right-hand side, this is a slow-carb diet. And I won't go into all the details of the diet, but suffice to say, if you want to lose body fat, a very simple thing to do is consume 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes of waking up. Really easy to remember. So if you want to make one change, try that. If you also don't want to get tired in the afternoons, try it. My dad went from an average of 5 pounds of fat loss per month to almost 19 pounds in the first 4 weeks. It's very common that people lose 4 to 10 pounds of fat in the first 7 to 10 days. The second rule, the extremes inform the mean, not vice versa. Frog design, if anyone's familiar with frog design, will tell you that if a client comes in and they want to design a pair of garden shears, the client will usually say, our average user is a middle-aged woman of this type, this height, this weight, etc. And frog design will reply with, we don't care about the average. We want the extremes. We want the, let's say, the paralyzed woman in a wheelchair and then the bodybuilder who's so big he can't brush his teeth. We want those two. And once you solve for the extremes, you handle everything in between, all of the use cases in between. On the right-hand side, it is also beneficial to watch and observe guinea pigs like myself. So I took stem cell growth factors flown in from Israel, combined them with my own blood, which had been drawn out and then spun to take out the platelet-rich plasma. Don't worry about it. A lot of growth factors. It's also what Super Bowl athletes do to get around a lot of regulations. And then I injected that into almost all of my injuries that I've accumulated. Ended up reversing more than 95% of them in 6 months. But I realized at the same time that prolotherapy, which effectively involves injecting sugar water into sites of injury, including, let's say, reconstructed joints, is effective in 8 out of 10 cases, and you don't have to go to that extreme. So you can learn a lot from the extremes. They inform the mean, but not the other way around. Tracking and loss aversion is more important than how to. I've had a lot of CEOs in Silicon Valley, where I live, come to me and say, look, I don't need the story, I just want to lose abdominal fat. Give me the list of things to do, and I'll do it. And in every case, the success rate has been 0%. What I found is that the prescription, a new diet, a new workout, is not the most important thing. It's actually understanding behavioral psychology. And there are two things that you want to build into any program of behavioral change. The first is tracking and awareness. So there have been studies done on what's called the FLASH diet. These have been done at the University of Wisconsin, also I think it was King's College in London. You could take two groups, let's say 100 people here, 100 people there. One side gets assigned personal trainers at random. The other side simply takes an iPhone and they photograph everything they eat or drink before they eat or drink them. And what you find is that that one group, simply by improving their awareness, will lose probably 3 to 5 times as much body fat. And then loss aversion, very important, is simply, in most cases, providing a bet or public accountability. So you saw Tracy. The reason she started her program is her colleagues, 6 of whom put in $100, created a betting pool. She put in $100 for a total of $700, and it became a competition. There was something to lose. As much as we talk about positive psychology, rewarding people, patting them on the back, shame, humiliation, all of those negative incentives are actually much more effective, much more reliable. And this can be applied in many, many different environments, whether that's weight gain, weight loss, or simply improving performance. So the rules of behavioral change, again, all of which are very flexible. The first is make it conscious, whether that's using a flash diet, iPhone or BlackBerry, let's say, or before pictures. Being aware of your current state is very important, whether that's taking audit of your finances or looking at your body. And that can be as simple as taking very unflattering photographs of yourself, front, back, and sideways, and putting them somewhere where you see them very consistently. This is the one element that was consistent among the winners of, let's say, the Body for Life Challenge and all the largest transformation challenges, before pictures. Make it a game. Peter Drucker, management theorist, is famous for saying, that which gets managed gets measured. Actually, it's the other way around. That which gets measured gets managed. Sorry, translator. That's going to be very confusing. And you can apply that to business, but you can also apply that to the human body. So the Nike Plus team, who developed the running pairing, found that after 5 sessions, you would establish a habit with their given base of users, and they would continue. And for that reason, it's important that you make the game winnable in the beginning. So if you think that you're going to start a new exercise program, it's going to be an hour a day for 3-4 times a week, make it 5 minutes, 10 minutes. That is how you win. If you go beyond that, that's fine. This is also applied with great effect by people like Jack Stack in business. The Great Game of Business I recommend very highly. He took his per share price from about 10 cents to more than $250 by using a very similar approach. Making it competitive, we spoke about this, embracing loss aversion. So a friend of mine, very thin Indian friend of mine, was unable to gain weight, could not gain weight to save his life. He created a betting pool with a number of friends of his, then created a public wiki where he would paste his weight every week and then proceed to talk an ungodly amount of smack. That's called shit-talking. Might be easier to translate. And as a result, he was on the hook to gain weight, and he ended up gaining 15 pounds in 3 weeks and has maintained that almost to the pound now 3 years later. Lastly, make it small and temporary. So the minimum effective dose, number 1. Number 2, make it a trial period, whether that's quitting smoking, whether that's losing fat, whether that's picking up a new behavior like clearing out your inbox once a day or once a week. Make it a temporary trial. If you perceive it as a permanent change, oh my God, I have to give up these following foods for the rest of my life, the abandonment rate, the cancellation rate will be enormous. So make it a 2-week trial. That is why my father, one of the reasons my father succeeded when we put all of these different recipes together, as opposed to failing as he had done before. And lastly, but not least, keep improvement relative. So you can see I'm never going to be that guy on the left. First of all, I don't have the tolerance for the amount of tanning lotion that he uses. I don't have the genetic predisposition. But the goal is to be the best version of you possible. And while the competitions help, ultimately, this is the type of tracking that will make the biggest difference. So I would encourage you, as accomplished people, many of whom will allow mediocrity, accept mediocrity in the physical self, it's very, very common, to not accept partial completeness. And the impossible seldom is impossible, just requires a lot of testing, and it doesn't have to be complicated. So think big, but start small, and start now. Thank you.